Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or that wonderful weight gain that seems to come along your belly without changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet nothing seems to be working. Or the scale actually ends up going in the opposite direction than what you want. Sorry, I think I'm getting sick from not having a running furnace in my house for the last 4 days. Anyways, back to our intro here. Our mission here at Vitality is to help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life, because your body is inherently different now that you've experienced these hormonal changes. So we want to help you get back in control of your body again, feel at home in your body again, be able to reach those health and fitness goals, live a life full of vitality, and of course, really help you understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today I have the wonderful Coach Beth on the podcast with us. She's one of our coaches here. And today we are going to be talking about the topic of mindset and how your mindset can really be preventing you from seeing changes during perimenopause and menopause when you're on your fat loss journey. We see it a lot, and this is something where we know the day. It's like a switch flips and all of a sudden it's just like, here we go. Like, this is where change is happening, and it's so wild, and people are like, mindset, woo woo, whatever. But it actually makes such a huge difference, and something that we work on with all of our clients. It's a huge, huge and important role of your journey with nutrition. And everyone comes into this journey with preconceived notions on like rules around food and nutrition and what's good and what's bad. And there's usually a lot of things that we end up having to change during this process, whether it's working on your health and fitness, whether it's body composition goals, whether it's specific labs we're trying to improve, whatever that might be. And everything really does truly start with our mindset, and our thoughts become feelings. Like, we talk about this all the time, where if you think something, your brain will provide you with proof that in fact is true. And you really have to try and take more of an objective look at this, is this actually true? Because most of the time we like manifest things, and we can kind of almost catastrophize a bit and cycle, and it turns into this tornado of like negative. And it can really influence then like our behaviors, the way that we act, whether or not we're going to be taking responsibility for choices as well. And it becomes such an important part of this journey. So Coach Beth and I are going to just really dive into this. So Beth, I'll let you just kind of take it away here.
Yeah, so how we define ourselves is important, super important, right? It can make or break our success. And I know it doesn't seem like it could. How can our thoughts really play that big of a part into it? Doesn't it just come down to nutrition and numbers and all of these things? It's just not true. And we see it time and time again with clients coming through our program. So think about how you define yourself. Do you think of yourself as someone who just has low willpower, right? That is me. Someone who can't stick with anything. Maybe someone who will always gain the weight back after losing it. These are all, pretty negative when you think about it. Or do you think of yourself as someone who uses their failures? Are you using them as an opportunity to learn? Are you someone who is capable of success? Someone who's always working to improve? Big differences between those two right there. I mean, if you saw yourself as more of the first person, these are definite signs that we have some mindset stuff to work through, right? And honestly, that you may have a fixed mindset about some things. And if you relate to that second person more, you're on the growth-minded side of stuff, which is where we want you to be, and you can learn to get there. It's just going to take some work.
Yeah, and with like the fixed mindset stuff, we see this a lot in clients who will be like, nothing's ever worked. There must be something else wrong with me. And yes, we do the hormone testing. Yes, we do this, but we have clients who were like, I think I'm not losing weight because of PCOS. And it's like, you have no indications of PCOS. You had your hormone tests done. That's not what's going on. We just need to be consistent with this thing, or work on this thing, or focus on de-stressing, or whatever it might be. But they almost get stuck into like this identity of how they identify with themselves, which is like pretty wild. Like we see this a lot when people have a diagnosed condition of some sort, whether it's hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, or just narratives that they've been told or what people have told them, right? Or doctors have said, or whatever that might be. And they end up using that. I don't want to say an excuse. It's not a good word to use. And people will be like, oh, I cannot believe you're gaslighting me, Steph. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we get so caught up on like this identity we've created for ourselves, or that we think that society has created for ourselves, that then we're like, well, it's not working because of this. And it's like, no, like we have data here that shows, like I was having a conversation with one of our coaches today, where it's like, no, we have data that shows like you haven't been consistent in here. Like you're not even in a deficit right now, even though we're supposed to be. Just because we're saying we're in a fat loss phase doesn't mean you're actually in a fat loss phase, because if you're not consistent with certain things, there's a lot of fluctuations, and you can't just say, oh, it's because of my Hashimoto's or my PCOS or this or that. And it's like, no, because people who have those things have successfully lost weight. When they do X, Y, Z, we need to do X, Y, Z, but we get so caught up that we almost use that as an excuse to like not do the things, or not put in certain things because, oh, it's not going to work because I have this. Like we get so tied to that identity. Beth, is there any like specific things that you see people really tying their identity to in particular?
Yeah, I mean, the main one when people come in, the main one is fat loss does not work for me. I'm at this point in my life, well, fat loss will not work for me. I'm willing to give it a shot. This program seems great, but it will not work for me. I see that one often. And it's amazing when you think about using using these thoughts as limiters versus like, hey, I want to see what's happening, and more of like that growth era, right? If we are using how we think and how we speak to ourselves as a limiting factor, like that is, we can do so much better than that. So that's one I often see coming in, is this will not work for me. The other one often has to do around exercise, right? Like I have tried lifting weights. That is also not going to work for me, or I'm going to get bulky, or, whatever connotation we have after that we think is going to happen. And it just, we have to give it another shot, right?
Yeah, or like doing it in a different structured way, or, we're pairing it with these things that then make it more effective. But I think we get so stuck on the, this doesn't work for me, so it's not going to work, or already coming in with skepticism. It's like, you're already almost giving yourself a way out. Like you're already giving yourself an excuse that it's not going to work, which is like a dangerous place to be, honestly, because like, if you don't think it's going to work, then it's probably not going to work, because you're already giving yourself the option of an out, as opposed to, oh, this is going to work and I'm going to do the things and it's going to be great and I'm going to do it. But like it's a lot of people will kind of give themselves like the option for it not to work. So then if things get tough or life happens, which life does happen, you kind of give yourself that option to like not do the things or not be successful. You're already giving yourself that narrative before you've even been on your journey, which sucks. And we do see that sometimes. And then finally, we've had clients who we've had to pull out of their first fat loss phase because of trauma or people passing away or whatever stressors come up. And then people are like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna be able to do this. Life always throws stuff in my way. And it's like, no, we're just gonna stabilize. We're gonna improve, focus on these things. And then we can dip down. Like we shared a testimonial on Facebook, our Facebook group not that long ago, of a woman who was pulled out of her first fat loss phase after 4 weeks because of life stressors and stuff. And now she's graduated from our program. She's done amazing. She's lost I think it was 16, 17 pounds, has no more gut health issues, is doing amazing. But her journey wasn't the timeline that she thought it was going to be because of these things that came up. But if she would have went in with the mentality of, oh, this isn't going to work for me, she would have given her excuse and then quit right then as soon as things got tough, or there was a curveball, or things didn't go quote unquote as planned. So that's a big thing too. So we're going to talk a little bit about fixed mindset. We've talked about this in a one of our first podcasts a very long time ago. We're already in the 70s or 80s by the time this one comes out. So we've been doing this for a while now, which is super exciting. But a fixed mindset is a thought pattern that is founded on the belief that our abilities are predetermined from the time that we are born and cannot be changed. So for instance, people will think of if you have a family history of obesity. A fixed mindset would be okay, since my parents were obese, then there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to be obese. Or my mom had Hashimoto's, so I'm going to have Hashimoto's. Or this, that, the other. You you think that what you are able to achieve is already predetermined basically from birth or from like a very young age. And that is not true at all whatsoever. And fixed mindsets are very much characterized by that all or nothing thinking. This is good, this is bad. I'm good. As soon as I'm off the wagon, it's like, screw it, I'm going to do whatever. It's an inability to hear feedback without feeling attacked or taking it personally. This is a huge one that we see. I have to have regular reminders with clients, actually. Like, this is something that I talk about a lot, is your coach is not here like being like, you're doing this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong to make you feel bad. It's okay. This is an area that we need to improve on. Let's make a plan to make sure that we can be more consistent, or that we're doing these things, or whatever it might be, right? It's not to make you feel poorly about yourself. If you're not aware you're doing these things, how the heck are you supposed to change? So I know I talked about the whole like emptying my a bowl of milk after having cereal in the sink, because Taylor hates that. He does the dishes and he does not like when I leave milk in the bowl. And I thought I was doing a good job. And then on a podcast, I don't know how many episodes ago, I talked about it, and he let me know that that was in fact false. So we are on a 4-day winning streak right now. We're doing really well. But again, like, I didn't get mad at him for pointing that out. I was just like, dang, like, I honestly thought that I was doing a good job of emptying the milk bowl, and I was not. So now it's like, okay, now I'm aware that I'm not doing as good as I thought I was. And now I'm far more conscious of doing it, which is great. But like, that could have easily, if I was in like a bad headspace or very fixed mindset, that very easily could have blown up into like a very not productive discussion. That could have been like a full-on fight, you know? And for some people it is. And it's a fixed mindset thing. It's like, you are so, any criticism or feedback you take so personally. Like, you're like, I made a mistake that impacts my self-worth. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. It just means that it's an area you need to improve on. And it's good that you know that you have an area to improve on. It can be resistance towards change. So this is where like we talk about carbs. Okay, Cindy, we're going to try and increase your carbohydrates at lunch. Scariest thing ever, you know? And it's very scary to change and try new things because you don't know what's going to happen. But that's also very exciting. It's you shouldn't be so afraid, right? It can be feeling threatened by other people's success. Beth, how many times do we get messages from people being like, why? Like, it's every time we post a testimonial, every time we post a success story, anytime someone shares a win in the group chat, we get a couple messages from our clients going, I think this isn't working. Yes. What's going on? Like, how many times has that happened to you?
Every time, right? There's always one at least. And it's threatening to some people, right? Because everybody's going to be on a different timeline for one. So, you know, Amy's timeline might be different than Cindy's timeline, and that's just is what it is at that point. But yeah, it is that like feeling threatened versus kind of more being open-minded, like, hey, I can get there too. Oh, we're showing that this can happen. That's the switch that we need to make, right? Being happy for other people versus being like, oh man, you can also wish it took you whatever amount of months, but you also need to put in the work and continue on, and it just might take you longer.
Well, and like, I don't think people ever read the captions on like the testimonials and stuff. It's like, this was a year transformation. People are like, I'm not there yet.
Right.
And I'm like, you're 2 months in.
Right.
You have time.
Yeah, we've got 10 months.
But I think, yeah, people just look at the immediate, like, oh my gosh. Like, and that's always the first question I get. How long did it take to get her there? Well, she reverse dieted for this long. We went through this many fat loss phases, and we went into maintenance, and it took this long. And people are always surprised because it's not a 30-day fix. It's not a 3-month fix.
I mean, that's what you see online, though. Term. Right? That's what you see online, though, mainly when stuff is posted where it's like, hey, I got so-and-so here, you know, at the start of March, and then at the end of March, she's here. And so I think people are just automatically are like, boom, another 30 days. And in our it's more like, yeah, this took a year. This took 6 months. This took 2 years. The timeline just looks different.
Well, and like people come to us too, because those things aren't working anymore because their metabolism and hormones are doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So we need to address those things. And those things don't get fixed in 30 days. It takes a long time.
Nope. It would be nice, but it just doesn't happen.
Exactly. And then the other thing too with like feeling threatened with other people's success is like just because so and so is successful doesn't make you any less like worthy or have any less value. Like this is something I struggled a lot with business. Now I feel good as to where we are, and like I feel like I've earned my stripes more. I'm still always learning, always trying to grow, trying to learn, but like I don't have the same response anymore. Whereas like I would go to a conference or an event or a mastermind or a certification and meet people and be like, I would leave feeling so crappy about myself, being like, man, I know nothing. Like, and I still almost, it's not hard for that thought to come in and be like, I'm so much further behind. I don't have enough experience. I don't have enough certifications. It's like, Steph, you have 2 diplomas, 2 degrees, 13 certifications. You're doing more. You're running a business. You have been in the field since 2011. You're doing okay. But I still have that nagging thought in the back of my mind because you're comparing where you are with someone who's been doing it for 30 years, 40 years, whatever it might be, right? And I used to like leave feeling so poorly about myself. And now when I get in that position, I'm like, okay, so I feel this way, not because I'm crappy and I'm not successful or I'm not doing X, Y, Z. It's because I need a little bit more education, or I need a little bit more hours, more reps, more practice, more exposure, whatever it might be, right? So it's okay, how do I do those things? Like, what do I need to do? And this is where like I have my mentors and my coaches and people that I reach out to for advice and help and support that lead me down the same road. And it's the same thing with coaching. So then we have clients that like freak out, like, I'm not doing good. It's like, no, you're doing great. And that's something I get in feedback forms all the time. It's like, I wish that like so-and-so would be a little bit more tough love on me. And it's like, no, they're telling you you're doing a good job because you are doing a good job. Now it just takes time. We got to be patient working on some of these things and just tweaking a few more things. And it's really funny how every time like a testimonial or something comes out, and honestly, that's part of the reason we don't post very many, because people just like panic, or they like message me being like, I want to sign up, I want to do this. And then when they don't get the result in 3 months, then they're upset. So we don't share a lot of those things because I want you to do it because you're learning, you're realizing this is what you need. You've listened to the podcast, all those things where you are ready and you know this is going to be a longer journey and you know like what to expect, what's realistic. But just because someone like has gotten there and you haven't gotten there yet doesn't mean that you are not going to get there, and it doesn't mean you have any less value than you did before you heard that person's story. Like none. The next one is quitting when things feel hard or overwhelming. This is a big one. Beth, I'm sure you can like talk about things where you wanted to quit as well, and then some coaching stories too. So chat a little bit about that.
Yeah. So quitting when things are hard or overwhelming. That's often our first inclination is like, I'm just going to stop, right? This is too much. It's adding too much to my plate. And my goal seems so far away that if I just stop now, not a big loss, right? But it is a huge loss because we're still, so far away from your goal. You're going to want to come back to this eventually. I've definitely had some clients come through that changing. Sometimes I do this. It's hard because we do this in such like a manageable way that it doesn't feel hard for a lot of people, right? But there are some decisions that clients have to make lifestyle wise that can actually be very difficult for them, right? Because when you change your lifestyle, it often kind of changes those around you as well, right? Especially if like you're the mom or you have holidays at your house and you're like, hey, I want more protein than, what we currently have been having. And these are the things that I'm going to have set out. It can look different for others as well. And we have to be cognizant that we're pulling other people into the changes that we're making as well, oftentimes, right? So that can be a really, really difficult part for people where, maybe I'll get a client in the summer and they're like, wow, this is nice. This is really good. And we're moving through summer and we get towards the holidays and they're like, wow, I am now involving so many other people because, I want to hit this, and this. And sure, I'll like really enjoy myself on these holiday days, but I actually feel good if I kind of keep on track through the month, right? And then enjoy these days versus like I'm going all in October, November, and December. And then we just have January where we're feeling terrible. Oftentimes by that point, they're like, I want to feel good. I know what feeling good feels like, and I want to keep that. So that can be really, really difficult. And having that conversation with their loved ones or whatever that looks like, that's why it's so important to have some accountability, right? I think that that's really number one. Having that accountability, and even if it's not a coach is a great one though, but even if it's not a coach, if it's like a loved one or a friend or somebody who can see what you're doing in more of like an objectional way versus a, where your feelings are in it, you want to see like somebody from the outside for sure. The coach thing can be really big here. And I've had to fix my gut health, which I should have been doing long ago, right? It's like been bothering me for a while and it just seems difficult. I have to change a lot of things. I really enjoy doing this, and this on the weekend. Once I change my gut health, I kind of have to like change the household because now I'm eating really boring food, right? So it's like, there's a bigger world than just me and my gut health. So it's taken me a minute to get to it. But then I hired a coach, I think last June. And I was like, help me out here. I know I need to do some things. Obviously, I need some accountability to get me there. And he put together a plan and we had to go low FODMAP for a while. And it was not a great time, but that accountability was huge, right? Because if I just did that on my own, I'd be like, but I could probably have a little gluten, right? That seems fine. I've done good for 5 days in a row. Let me have a bagel. Like that would never have helped me. I needed to be in this for like 3 months to really figure out like, oh, it is actually that bagel that's hurting you, right? So, and to learn that, or else I never would have. So quitting when things feel hard or overwhelming, easy to do, but it sets you so far away from your goals, and finding somebody who can keep you accountable is going to be everything.
Like I remember, so like Beth, Cariana, and I went hiking and did like a few days in BC, like on the West Coast, did hiking and stuff. And I remember your stomach was bothering you then. And that was like over 2 years ago.
Yes, it's been a while.
So your guys aren't the only ones who take delayed action. We are all the exact same. Do not worry. But it's true, like with quitting or when things get hard or overwhelming, we see this a lot with clients if they don't communicate well in terms of if they have a trip coming up and stuff like that. They'll be like, okay, like I don't want to track during my trip. It's okay. Like we need to like ease you out of this fat loss phase, because post fat loss, your body's very vulnerable to excess calories and want to store fat because that's just how our bodies work. And then they're like, well, I just don't want to track for a few days before either. It's like, okay, but we need to ease you out. You need to like communicate that with me. And they'll be like, oh, I just like don't want to track. I don't feel like it right now. And then boom, the scale goes up because your body's very vulnerable post fat loss phase. And then they're upset. And it's just this whole thing. And then they want to quit. And it's like, Kate, no, like I told you what the consequences were. You made the choice. That's fine. I'm not mad at you for doing that, but you can't be mad at yourself either, or myself, because I told you. So now we just got to deal with these consequences, make a new plan, move forward. It's never going to be linear the way that you want, but realizing that quitting is going to put you further back, or like same with like tracking. If you go from tracking all the time to all of a sudden cold turkey not, like I still can't estimate what's on my plate. And I've been doing this since like 2011. Like this, it does not work. We've been in this for a long time.
I'm so bad.
Yeah, I'll be like, oh, I think I'm doing pretty good on protein. And I'm like, I would guess this is like, I don't know, let's say like 2 ounces or something. I weigh it, it's like 0.75. And I'm like, dang it. I wasn't even close.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, like the notorious underestimating for me too. Like I will always underestimate.
I underestimate calories and overestimate like protein or fiber or things like that. So then it's like, I'm eating more than I think I'm eating. And then I'm really eating less protein. Yeah. So you think you're doing really good. But it's very easy to like quit when you get like, because like tracking and stuff can be exhausting and boring and, let's face it, not a great time. But this is where like, okay, I don't want to track for a while. How can I do this without seeing my progress go wayside? That's where you have that conversation with that coach or whoever's kind of keeping you accountable, because like then it sucks to feel like you're falling backwards. So it's like you need to have a plan, just like you had a plan to go into it. You need to have a plan to go out of it. That doesn't mean you got to track forever, but like there has to be an exit strategy. Learn the tools that you need, and then once you're ready, you can dip back into it. But it's like then you have to allow yourself a lot more flexibility and realistically what your results are probably going to look like, because you can't expect to be tracking and weighing everything to just like guessing or not really tracking anymore. You can't expect that consistency to be there, because like we've all seen it. We go out for supper one day and then it's like, man, my like calories were way higher, or dang it, I didn't have breakfast as I wasn't tracking. Now my calories are way lower, or whatever it might be, right? So we see inconsistency even when you're tracking. Imagine how much more that is when you're not tracking. So make the choices that you want. Do not quit, but like you need to take responsibility for those choices and those actions and be okay with that. We're never going to get mad at you as long as you take responsibility for your choices. That's like all we care about. But like knowing that quitting because like you realize you may have made a mistake or made a choice that wasn't conducive towards your goals because you're prioritizing something else at the time, which is fine. But realizing that quitting when like stuff gets tough or you're not enjoying it as much anymore, having the conversation instead makes it so much more productive so that you'll actually hit your goals. But when you're overwhelmed, it's like, yeah, you just need to adjust. It doesn't mean you quit. You adjust. Like when I got overwhelmed when my mom passed away, I didn't just like quit everything that I was doing, right? Like I still had to do things, but I adjusted what was realistic. So tapering back exercise, that wasn't happening as much. Like I had to focus more on my rest and feel my feelings and, prioritizing therapy. That was huge. So it's like, no matter where your overwhelm is coming from, that doesn't mean you quit. It just means you adjust. And I think people don't necessarily understand that as well. Like, is there clients that you would say tend to go that way as opposed to like quitting as opposed to adjusting? Or you're like, how was your week this week? And they're like, well, I did nothing. You're just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a really good plan set up and then it's like, wah, 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 which is totally okay. That's going to happen. But yeah, I find this more often in like the beginning of our program, right? That this is more where it's like, oh, yep, Tuesday, things hit a snag, week went out of control. Here I am on Monday checking in with you. You will see from Wednesday through Sunday, I've got nothing for you because I didn't do anything, right? And as we get through the coaching, we learn, it's like we can't predict nor can we avoid snags. They're always going to happen. Even when we're like, I have the perfect week lined up. Here are my meals. Here's what's going to happen. Something will turn up. I guarantee you something will turn up and we kind of have to pivot. So going through that process with clients a couple of times, this is why it's so important. And I know you say it all the time, Steph, that we want you to fail when you're with us. We will be waiting for you to fail because it's going to happen. And then we could be like, okay, cool. So this happened Tuesday. And let's see how we could have done things versus what we did do. And let's kind of work towards making that better next time, right? So I often find that happens more in the beginning of the program, which is, signaling kind of what was happening outside of the program then as well. And then these skills that we learn as we kind of move through where it's like, okay, things snagged Tuesday. I pulled it back together Wednesday. And then the rest of my week was normal. And I'm like, okay, yes, we're getting it. And we didn't lose a week, right? So I think that's really important to, it just takes practice, right? And even the next time they might be like, snag Tuesday, I lost Wednesday, Thursday. Don't know what happened to them, but Friday I was back. Saturday, Sunday, we're looking good. And I'm like, awesome, right? This is improvement. And that's really all we're looking for.
And that's what we're looking for is improvement and that you're learning. And I always just like to use the phrase failing forward. So it's like you make a mistake or an error or like not the best ideal choice that maybe you could have made. And it's like, okay, so let's go through the decision-making process. Like, why did you choose that decision over, like, what were the decisions that you were choosing from? Because ideally there's always decisions to be made. So were you choosing from like 3 different options in your mind that you had of like, these are the decisions I can make? What made you choose that decision? And then are you happy with that decision? What would you have liked to have done instead? And then we talk about the other options that there might be available that you weren't even aware of, how to navigate that situation in the future or avoid that potential situation in the future. Like, we really help you go through what that process looks like, because I think a lot of us are just like, oh, I just didn't do it. And it's like, no, there was decisions. So what were the options you were weighing? Why did you choose one over the other? Okay, so now that we know why you made those decisions, now it makes it easier for us to plan ahead, like what will that look like next time, which is huge, because I think like if we aren't going back and reviewing those things, like, I failed, I'll just try again next time, you're probably just going to keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. Whereas if you're failing with us or a coach or someone who's keeping you accountable, whatever that looks like, a program, I don't really care. Like, you're learning in the process. And if you're not, that's a problem because you're probably just going to keep doing that same cycle over and over and over again. The other fixed mindset thing that we have here is believing that you're incapable of success or that you're defined by your abilities. So this is a huge one. Today marks 3 years since my day that I was fired, March 19th. So this episode's going to come out later. Best thing that ever happened to me. And like I told on like my socials and stuff today, it's like, I grew up in a town of 1,000 people. Like that's not a typo. You're not hearing that wrong. Like 1 plus 3 zeros. My graduating class had 40 people. I was bullied. I did not look like any of my peers because like there's not very many Latin people in a small town in the middle of prairie Canadian towns in the farm. It's not where you find Latin people. It's not where we are. So I was bullied a lot. I didn't fit in. People like grew up there. Their parents grew up there. Their grandparents grew up there. I never felt like I fit in. That was when like, you know, Facebook and cell phones were like just becoming a thing. Like it was very new. So like the cyberbullying and stuff now is like way worse. But like this was my first taste of like, oh, people can say crap to my face and on the internet. This is so wonderful. And you can imagine as a teenager, that didn't feel very good. I got made fun of for not having boobs. I got made fun of for thinking that I was quote unquote better than everybody else, which doesn't make sense because I had the worst self-esteem. So I promise you those thoughts never crossed my mind. But like, so I always like, I like to tell that story because it's like, I came from like not a good financial background. I worked since I was 14 or actually younger, even babysitting stuff to help my mom pay bills because my dad just like pieced out, was not popular, did not have a lot of friends, was like a victim of like abuse and stuff. Like there are so many reasons as to why I shouldn't have been successful and why I shouldn't have achieved. Like I honestly, it blows my mind that I'm even here. Like sometimes it's still just like is shocking to me that I have a podcast and I've talked to like my heroes and stuff. Like it's crazy, but it's like if I would have allowed the things people said about me or like let those beliefs really like get to me in terms of like, you're a nobody likes you, you think you're better than anybody else, just watch, you're gonna fail, like all of these things, you come from nothing, a small town, like people don't amount to things from here, like if I would have let those things like actually define me, I would have never done what I'm doing right now. No way. Not a chance. And it's like, though, if I would have let those things and experiences really influence me in a way that like made me believe all of them, that I'm incapable of success, who knows what I would have been doing now. Like I probably would have like honestly gotten pregnant really young and been working a job that I hated, probably been in a relationship that I didn't enjoy. Like it could have been so drastically different. So like you cannot let those thoughts and feelings and what other people say about you like really influence what you think you're capable of, because like I never in a million years would have thought I had a successful podcast and business and had a team and created this culture and like literally actually loving my job and like meeting the person that I'm supposed to be with. Like I never thought this is what, like I never even dreamed it. Like this is not at all what I was like, this is what I want to do. Like I just wanted to be a phys ed teacher. Like that was my plan. Like I never thought that I would achieve what I'm doing. So I think, and it's the same thing with your health and stuff like that. Like that I talk to people all the time who are like, I never thought that with hypothyroidism, I could feel this good and that I would lose weight. Or I never thought that, you know, I would get back to a place where my anxiety wasn't super crippling. And I found out it was just because of my hormones and nutrition. Like you can't allow like your past experience, like, yes, they shape us, they influence us a lot, but you can't let that be a determining factor as to whether or not you're going to be defined, like whether or not you're going to be successful. So Beth, what are some things that maybe you let like define you that like held you back for a while or that you're glad didn't? And then what do you see with your clients as well?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, if you guys have listened to previous podcasts, you know that I was anorexic in high school and college, and that shaped me for why it went on so long. Was like, I was like, this is me, right? It shaped me for a long, long time. Obviously a very unhealthy thing to do. But I thought, and I can still catch myself saying these things, which is something I'm still like working on, is I thought I was going to have a really bad, like even when I healed, a really bad relationship with food for the rest of my life, right? Because I'm like, it's so bad right now. There's no way it's going to get better. And it's gotten better. But then I still catch myself saying, oh, it's never going to really leave. Where I'm like, I don't know if that's true, right? Because I'm doing such different things now than I was ever thought I could do with food previously, like 10 years ago or so. I never thought I'd be here even where I'm eating a lot, right? And I'm not worried about it. You know what I mean? So that, I think that's a big one for me. And that defined me for a long time. It cost me sports teams. I really love sports. And it cost me, a couple sports teams because I'm just like really frail at that point, right? And I was not able to compete. And the skill I had was lost because my physical ability just couldn't keep up, right? So it cost me a lot of things. And I think moving forward, and it comes with eating a little bit more, you get a little more clear-headed. But I think moving forward, the ability to be like, okay, I can have a better relationship with food. I've proven that to myself over and over and over, and it does not bother me. And then I also can, like and with that, I was like, I will never be that strong. I just can't be that strong. I'm naturally lean, which I am pretty naturally lean, but I'm not naturally that lean, right? That was not a natural lean we were looking at there. So in all of that, where it's like, okay, yep, now I'm gaining muscle, I'm eating a lot of food. Like I am changing things that I never thought could be changed about me. So I think that is a huge one. Clients as well. There's some clients that come in and one of my favorite things is showing them, they start off with like a really small home gym and they're like, these are my weights and these are what I'll work with, which is like perfect. Like, let's get it going. Let's build some muscle. And then about halfway through the program, we get through a couple and they're like, you know what? These are too easy. Like buy some bigger weights. Let's go. So then they buy their bigger weights. Maybe they get a squat rack and they feel really good about that. Right. And we're suddenly lifting some like really big weights. And a lot of my clients have been like, I've never been athletic. I've never lifted weights before. And I'm like, now you're squatting with a squat rack. Like that's a big change, right? That's huge. So those are some of my favorite ones because oftentimes, a lot of women have been through like beach body programs, things like that, where it's not necessarily like how much can you lift? It's like how fast can we lift these tiny weights? It's really what we're doing.
It's cardio.
Here. Yes, cardio with weights. And let's make sure the weights are cute, right? Like we're all really coming from like this area. And then suddenly it's like, I don't care how cute the weights are. How much can I load up on my back and squat right now? And I'm like, that is very cool. I like that.
Yeah, and I think another big determiner too is like age. A lot of people are like, it's too late to start, or I've never been active. So like, I'm not a person who works out. I'm not a person who does this. Like I used to use like, I'm a workaholic. And now I go, I have a tendency to be a workaholic because it can be there, but I'm not a workaholic because that's a very like set in stone, very concrete statement that like tells you that it's never going to change, which is not true. So you can say, I am a person who never used to work out, or I never used to enjoy working out. I have a tendency to, I'd rather read than go exercise or whatever, right? And there's women in our program who fit that to a T. They're like, I'd rather knit. I'd rather, sit and watch TV or read a book, and being active is not natural for them. And now they're like, I'm a person who like actually works out like 2 days a week and like it feels great. Like, but we limit again, like what we think we can achieve based on like who we are, what people label us as, right? Because like, I don't know, people will be like, use words like overachiever for me a lot, or like workaholic is one that comes up often. And that's cool. But then also that like it gives an indication that I'm like it's never good enough, or I'm never like happy enough, which I don't like, because I do like, I'm very happy with like our team and where we're at. And if the company continues to grow, awesome. If it doesn't, I'm also just happy with the way things are right now. It is amazing. It is great. But like, be careful with the verbiage that you use for yourself, and like the verbiage that people use when they describe you, and like, don't be afraid to correct them. Be like, I have a tendency to do that, but that's not who I am, because there's a very big difference there because like to me, overachiever before was something I'm like, yeah, I love that word. Now I'm like, I don't like that, because to me that makes it seem like nothing is ever good enough, or I'm always looking for more, which is not bad to look for growth, and it's appropriate sometimes, but there's like times and seasons where you can't, you have to pull back a bit. And I think, again, just being aware of like even just verbiage around those kinds of things is important to be aware of. So those are all like the fixed mindset things. Now here's the growth mindset stuff. This is what we want to see. A growth mindset is a thought pattern that is founded in the beliefs that your abilities are determined by how you work on them rather than what you're born with. Growth mindsets are characterized with dynamic thinking, and just like fixed mindsets, they can occur in very many different ways. So the first one is a love for learning, for failures, like learning from others, learning from feedback. And this is the big one, because like this is where like feeling defensive and like criticism's not taken well, or you take things so personally that it affects your self-worth. That's more the fixed mindset side of things. The more growth mindset is you actually enjoy learning from failures and from others and from feedback. And I think this is something that as people go through the coaching process improves for sure. And if it doesn't, typically we're not going to see the best results, like, because it's very combative, almost very defensive, which can be tough. But no, like, we're there to love you. Like, we're telling you things because we care. We want to see you improve. We want to see you grow. We want to see you make changes. Like for me, I think there's so many failures that I've learned from, like relationships. You learn a lot from like past ones, right? Even like parenting styles or communication, or, the way you study, or, like there's so many things that you learn from, that like if you didn't have that experience, like you would have never learned those things, or it wouldn't have been as impactful. So what do you think would be like the most common like failure, quote unquote, that people learn from in the program, Beth, that you've seen with your clients specifically?
Good question. I think one of the big ones is honestly consistency, right? And I think people come in thinking that they are, and I think everybody naturally would be like, I'm very consistent with my nutrition. I don't understand what's happening. Can you help me? And then we get it into the spreadsheet that we use, or you write it down, and you're like, oh, yep, 4 out of 7 days, I'm actually kind of all over the place, right? And I think that, and I always tell people, I always tell people, this is not like next week, you're not going to get 7 out of 7 days, right? We're not going to be like, oh, yep, this is the problem, boom, fixed. Like, it's not that easy, right? So, we'll shoot for 5 out of 7 days. Let's say we didn't hit it. We'll shoot for 5 out of 7 days again. And then we'll keep building it up until it's like 6 or 7 days out of the week here, I'm very consistent and I'm averaging where I need to be. I think that's a big one. The other failure I see time and time again is that oftentimes, and I tell people before this, but that first week of the fat loss phase, right? That's a hard one. We lose some calories. You just, got to a really good spot where you're like, I'm loving the amount of calories I'm at. And we get you into a fat loss phase and it's like, whoa, where'd my calories go? Right. And we're trying to learn how to work with that. So I try to help clients so much on that, on the front of that, right? Where it's like, hey, I need you to pre-log. Like, even like I'm telling you about your fat loss phase in 2 weeks. I want you to start playing around in your app to see, okay, how can I hit these goals, with the foods I have around in any swaps? And let's get that looking really good before we get there. And I've just learned to do that over time, or else that first week, we could be like Wednesday and they could be like, Beth, the ship is sinking. I need help me out. So we want to try to avoid that. But in both scenarios, like even if that first week doesn't go that well, no big deal. Guess we've only got time here. Let's fix it for this next week and talk about like what happened. Where, like, do not get to dinner and only have 30 calories left. I don't want to see one large cucumber as your dinner. I swear. So we want to make sure we're not making that mistake, right? And that failure will help.
And it's always when you're starting something new. So like when you start in the program, lots of things come up of like, oh, I thought I was consistent because I was eating quote unquote clean. And it's like, your calories can still be all over the place, regardless of how quote unquote clean that you're eating, right? Or like, oh, I thought I was doing this, or like I thought because of this I was being consistent, or like workouts. It's like, oh wow, like I'm actually not doing as well as I thought I was doing. So there's lots of new changes, and then you go into your fat loss phase, and it's the same thing. It's like now you feel good, you're comfortable, you've got some consistency, like things feel good when you're at maintenance, and then you switch into your fat loss phase, and it's like, oh crap, like I'm having to learn new things because the things that you were using in your reverse, like more nuts and seeds, those things kind of disappear a little bit more in a fat loss phase because they're very calorie dense. So it's every time you change something, you're learning new things. And this is why it's important to be aware, like, okay, as I'm going into a new, like, I feel like it's boring, blah, blah, blah. That's awesome. That's good. That means you've nailed it. Congratulations. That's like a day to celebrate. But now when we go into something different, don't panic, because this is where like the overwhelm and the new changes are kind of scary, or like you want to quit because it's challenging. You feel like you're not hitting it because you're used to being more quote unquote successful, right? So being aware that every time there's new things, it gets more challenging. The next one is, instead of being like intimidated and feeling poorly about yourself when other people are successful, view that as an inspiration. Like, heck yeah, Mandy did this. I'm going to do that. If she can do it, I can do it. We've got this. Like, be excited. But comparison is like, it's tough. It's a thief of all joy. Don't do it. The next one is the deep desire and belief that you can, in fact, improve. This is something that like people are like, my coach keeps telling me I'm doing great. And I'm like, yeah, you're the one who thinks you're not doing great. You're actually doing great. Like, how many times do you have that conversation, Beth?
Oh my God, all the time. I think, and I like, if I really celebrate with people, I'm like, whoop, whoop, we're dancing. They can't see me when I'm doing their check-in, but they know. There's been clients where I'm like, I can hear you smiling that whole time, and I just had a normal week. And I'm like, no, you are rocking it, right? And I'm like, take a look back at week 1, look at us today. You're absolutely rocking it, right? And I can point out several things that happens all the time where I'm like, you're being more hard on yourself when I'm the accountability person, right? You let me dictate that. You celebrate when you're doing good. This is awesome.
Well, it's like, and this is your new normal. That's amazing. You're like, oh, I'm just doing normal. It's like, yeah, this is your new normal. Do you remember what your old normal was? It was not this. Like, this is awesome that we're consistently seeing this. This is your new normal. Heck yeah. Like, be excited. And people are like, oh, Beth just keeps telling me I'm doing too great. I'm like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes I'm like, you are doing absolutely fantastic. And they're like, I'm not. And I'm like, where? You show me where you're not doing good, because you're doing really, really well.
Exactly. The next one is knowing that like talents are not fixed traits. Skills can be developed. Just like you could go and start learning how to shoot a basketball properly, or I could learn how to knit or crochet. I won't be doing that anytime soon, but like I could. It's a skill that I don't have now, but I can develop that. It's the same with nutrition, fitness, all those things. A willingness to seek out challenges and face them head on. This is like something that's tough for a lot of people. We're just used to like resistance, because we're used to like just backing off. We don't we like instant gratification. Like when there's resistance, it's like, do I really want to do this? I don't know, right? Like it can be really tough. Whereas like trying to challenge yourself to approach things differently or with a different mindset can be really good. And this is something that we see with like tracking a lot. This is something we see with like meal planning and prepping a lot. And that doesn't mean you're going to have Tupperware containers and stuff. That's not our vibes here. We don't do that. We're not, even though some of us are bikini competitors, none of us coach our clients that way, because it takes a special kind of person to want to do that. And I am not one of those people. So, but like, okay, viewing it as like, okay, I've never tracked before. I don't really want to track, or I had a bad time tracking before. Okay, so what was it about tracking that you didn't like before? It's probably the fact that you were trying to eat as little as humanly possible. Now we're tracking to make sure that you're actually eating enough. That you're getting enough carbs. You're getting enough protein. Are you having some fun foods in there? It changes everything. So it's like, why did you not like that? Is that in fact the exact same thing now, or how can we change that? I think is a really huge one. And same with the meal planning and prepping. People are like, this is just too hard. Like I can't meet my targets. I'm like, you know what would help? If we had a little plan, that helps a lot. And then also just like knowing your attitude and your efforts determine everything. Like if you want to find a way and you are like communicating with your coach in particular, if you're in coaching, this is like one of the biggest things. If you don't tell us that you don't understand something or something isn't clear or that you're struggling with something, like we were talking on a call yesterday and someone's like, yeah, like my client told me yesterday she's been dealing with joint pain for a month. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, it's the first time she told me. And I was like, what? Like, so like we can't fix things if we don't know they're happening. And like if you aren't clear on something, you have to be like, hey, I'm not sure what you meant by this. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing this week. Like ask for clarity because that is literally what we're here for. Because if you don't tell us, we're thinking we're doing a great job of communicating. So it's the same both ways, right? So like we'll try and really pull stuff out of people sometimes. Like, oh, digestion was good. And it's like, I know nothing. Like I literally don't know anything more than I did before I read this question. So are your bowel movements every day? Are they loose? Are they hard? Are you having gas? Is there constipation? Do you have heartburn? Like what's going on here? Like give me a little bit more. So like that's a big thing too. It's like if you are in coaching, you need to communicate more. If you are in a program or something, ask lots of questions. Like that's literally what you're paying for. That's what you need. And like coming into an attitude of like, you're not bothering us. Like that's not what's happening here. You're never bothering us. You're never going to get in trouble for asking a question. I'm going to be more disappointed if I didn't know that you were struggling for a month, even though your last 3 check-ins were fine until today. Like we want to know these things because we want to see you do well. And like you have to communicate because it'll make your entire journey so much better. So you can see how like having a fixed mindset can really keep you stuck because like you're very defensive, you're like sensitive to things, you're like struggling more, right? So a growth mindset can really, really help you succeed. It's because if you have that fixed mindset, you're just not even giving yourself a chance. So now it's very likely that you have like probably a mix of both things and like it can be in different areas, right? So I think we chatted about this a little bit, Beth, but let's break down like a couple of these different areas that we see this in.
Yeah, for sure. So, a lot of people in their jobs, I find, are pretty growth mindset, right? Especially if we're like trying to move up in careers or we're trying to move up in the company. It's like, yeah, why can't I be the manager here? Why can't I be the district manager? And that seems like an easy transition for people. At least a lot of people on that growth mindset. It's like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And we often, where I find that fixed mindset, and I think it's because people have seen the most failure in fitness and nutrition, and then we get that fixed mindset, right? Where maybe sometimes in your job, depending on your job, you benefit from the more work that you put in, right? It's like, oh, I did these sales, I moved up a level, or whatever your job looks like. A lot of the times you benefit from what you put in. And it is the same way with fitness and nutrition, but we're not often putting in the work that actually needs to get done. Like we could just be doing it wrong. So we're not benefiting from that, right? Where it's like, I'm doing crazy intense cardio 6 days a week and I'm not seeing my body composition change in the way I want it to. Yeah, you're putting in the work. It's just not doing the thing that we need it to do. It's the wrong work for the outcome, right? So I think that's important. But yeah, I see job a lot in the growth mindset. Like when people talk to me, especially clients about their jobs, I'm like, yeah, you are absolutely rocking it. You've climbed the corporate ladder. Like you're doing some really cool stuff, or you own your business and you're crushing it. That's awesome. But then we get stuck in the fitness and nutrition aspect of it.
Yeah. And I think with that too, it's like, we think that just because so with work, for example, usually the more effort that you put in, the more you're going to get out of it, right? So whatever that kind of looks like. But if you're doing the wrong kind of work, so let's say that you're like, I don't know, studying for a medical exam, but you're studying plants. You're putting in all this effort into studying plants. That's not going to help you succeed in the medical field, right? You're not going to become a doctor from studying plants, unless you get a PhD in plants, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about MDs. But so you're putting in all this effort in one area, but if it's the wrong area, you won't get those results. But So you're getting the positive feedback or the feedback like, oh, you need to work better on like studying this one area, or your performance reviews at work and stuff, right? And you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like I feel kind of crappy, but like I want this. So I'm going to do these things. But when it comes to nutrition, exercise and fitness and health, it's like you've been doing low carb forever. I'm like, hey, we got to increase your carbs. And you're like, no, I'm going to keep doing this thing, even though it's clearly not working and I feel like garbage. So it's kind of the same thing, but we're so fixed mindset when it comes to health and nutrition compared to like literally so many other areas in our life. It's actually kind of wild. So how can you change this fixed mindset to growth mindset? And it's not going to be all at once. It never will be. Like that is not a thing. This is a thing that takes a lot of time. And the first thing is going to be like reframe the way that you speak to yourself. This is a huge, huge aspect because we are our worst critics. The way that we talk to ourselves, if we said those things out loud to other people, we would probably like maybe get slapped, to be honest. We would have no friends. People would not like being around us. So changing things to like, I can't to I can versus like, I'll never achieve my goals to I'm working towards my goals. I trust the efforts will pay off. I messed up and I overate or I did this. I might as well give up versus okay, I overestimated my calories today. I'm going to adjust and be right back on track. I'm human. We make mistakes. Life is never perfect. Like reframing the way you speak to yourself is huge. Like I cannot emphasize that enough. And saying it out loud is like crazy powerful. I will like never forget the first time I ever told myself I was proud was the day before I opened my clinic. It was the first time I had ever, and I was already an adult, very much so at this time, where I said the words out loud, I can't believe it. I am so proud of myself, and just like cried stupid amounts of tears. But now I can say it often. But it's like that first time of saying stuff, it's uncomfortable. It can be emotional. It can be a lot. So like paying attention to how you speak to yourself, like would you want your daughters and your kids and your siblings to hear you say those things about yourself that you do? Probably not. So that should be like your first inkling. Would you want your family members to say that about themselves? Probably not. So that's a really big one. Beth, I'll let you take over to the next one here.
The next one is to learn to embrace your setbacks. So setbacks are the only way we grow. If we're perfect at everything, we really have no reason to improve ever, right? We just come in being perfect. We wouldn't be here, right? So we know that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. We want to use setbacks or failures to fuel your fire to come back better, right? This is everything. This is what we're talking about, using those failures to learn, come back, let's be better next time, even a little bit better than we're learning. We do want to embrace obstacles, knowing that they will make you more resilient and better equipped to handle future adversities. This is another one. It's always the stories that we hear from people that are really people that we look up to is because they've been through some really hard times and have gotten through it. Like think about somebody who you really look up to. It's probably because they have accomplished something that is amazing, or they've gone through a really hard time and have gotten through it and came out the other side, right? So keep that in mind. That is how you know what to do next time. And that comes up a lot in your fitness and nutrition journey as well, right? So it's like, yeah, this week sucked, but now I know that I need to grocery shop on Sundays or else my week is not going to work out the way I need it to. It can even be something like that. And then we want you to trust the process. And this might be the hardest one because it can be hard to trust that your hard work is going to pay off, right? Especially if you don't see results quickly. And if you're coming into this in a spot where I have tried all of these other fitness and nutrition things and it hasn't worked out and I'm still here, it's hard to trust that process in those points. But it is so important that you do, especially when you're working with a coach, because they're navigating for you, right? You just have to do the work, show up, be ready to learn. And that process is going to work out for you.
It's like your coach gives you like that map and you just got to follow the map. You're not like lost in a forest trying to navigate your way out and hoping it'll work out. Like, know that you're going to get there. It's just the journey is always going to take longer than you want it to. Always. Like anyone who's worked with us can tell you this. It's not a quick process.
No, I always tell my clients, like, you, because they're always like, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? And I'm always like, I am steering the ship. You complete your goals, but I've got the ship under control, right? Week by week, I'm steering the ship. I'm not, which is should be frightening to people because I'm very bad with directions, right? But I promise the ship is going in a good spot. I've got I've got CarPlay on in a ship. We're ready to go. The next thing is know that everything you're doing now is setting you up for success. That can be a great mindset to be in, right? So even if it seems hard right now, know that the work that you're putting in is going to benefit you, even next week, but definitely in the future, right? You're putting in votes to become the person who you want to be.
Exactly. So the next big one, which is like probably my favorite one to talk about, is remembering your why. Let that be your driver. Why do you want to achieve these goals that you have set for yourself? Like, yes, all of us have physical goals that we want to achieve, but when we talk to people, usually it's a lot deeper than that. It's so that they can fit into their favorite clothes again, so that they're not afraid to be in pictures anymore, that they can go to social outings without being self-conscious, so that they can feel good, sleep good, have energy, have their libido come back, be active with their family. They don't want to be a sideline parent or grandparent. Like maybe they had, a parent that like passed away from like diabetes or cardiovascular disease or whatever that might be. It's always deeper than just that physical goal. And when you figure out what that is, it makes it so much easier to stick to the plan and want to do it, to have a positive mindset. Because what we see is, like, I always like saying this quote is, if values are clear, decisions are easy. If you know why you're doing it and it has enough value to you, it's very easy to make choices. For me, very easy right now to not drink alcohol. I'm pregnant, want to have a healthy baby. That's a very easy decision for me to make because that value is clear. But when we don't know why we're doing something, if we don't have a clear value that's really important to us, that is a priority, it's very easy to be like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it, or do it when it's convenient for you. So like maybe it's really taking an emphasis on, why do I want to lose weight? How will that impact my health? How will that impact my relationships? How will that impact my career? How I show up, how I feel? Write those things down, because that's going to give you a very clear picture as to why you're actually doing it. Because it's always more than just weight loss. Always. I have not met anyone, but there isn't something else there. There's always something. And then putting that somewhere, whether it's the affirmations and the why on a sticky note somewhere where you can see it all the time, it just really helps give you focus on your reasons for embarking on this health and fitness journey. It'll help you stay the course, achieve your goals, become the best version of you. So Beth, what do you end up seeing like is the biggest why typically?
Oh, the biggest why I see oftentimes, and you're right, it has to be more. It has to be more than losing weight and the aesthetic side of stuff, or else you will not stick to it. And the biggest one I see is mainly family stuff, right? I want to be around for my family. I'm having grandkids and I want to be able to run around with them. Or it's always something to do with other people. Always much bigger than yourself, right? I've even had ones where it's like, hey, I'm going, I want to hike. And I can do these little beginner hikes, but I cannot do a big one with my friends. And there's a hiking group or whatever, and I want to be able to do that. So bigger health, long-term goals than just like, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds. Because if that's all it is, and it's not, I promise you it's not. If you're thinking it is right now, there is a bigger why underneath. Because if that is all it is, you're not going to stick to it because it's not big enough.
Exactly. Is there a certain goal that you're working towards right now, whether it's health or fitness or career or anything right now that you're working towards that has a pretty strong why for you that you're like really focusing on right now?
Yeah. Good question. My why right now is because I've had such a long journey with like anorexia and eating disorders and disordered eating. And even when I thought I was doing good, I wasn't doing good. Such a long history with that. My why is so deeply fueled in proving to myself that I can be strong and that I can actually like be super athletic and I can do these things. A lot of the stuff that got held back when I was like punishing myself for who knows what, but there was quite the situation. So that strong why is like, and I've always been like, I have a twin sister. I always joke around with the group here that I am the superior twin. And I think, that's come a long time. And I love Jade, right? She's perfectly fine. But she, like, growing up, she's been always, and it's hard when you're twins. And I think anybody with siblings even knows, but it's so hard when you're twins because she was just like a genius, like a textbook genius out of the bat, right? So I think I like always a little bit of comparison going on. But I think, and I would always give myself like you're not as good, right? Just like knowing I just have to accept that I'm not as good. And I don't want to do that anymore, right? I don't think I have to accept that I'm not as good and that I can prove to myself that I like am, and it's not even about Jade anymore, but just in my general world that I am better than I think I can be. And I can grow past what I think I can. So that is like the huge driving factor, is just proving to myself that I like don't always have to be in second place.
Oh, I love that so much. I think for me right now, it's like definitely business focused. And then obviously having this baby, I want to be a good parent. So like really making sure that I am like not going to my workaholic tendencies and making sure that I'm like allowing the business to do what it needs to do, but also be around for family and stuff like that. But my big one now is just like the more that this business has grown and the more people that we talk to, I just see such a huge need for like education around this stuff, for coaches who need more education around this stuff. Like the amount of people who message me regularly being like, do you have a course? Do you do a mentorship? Do you do anything like this? It has just like, it's really driving my fuel for like, somebody needs to do this. Why not me? Like, we could change the lives of so many women just by sharing more information and more education and, mentoring more coaches and things like that. So for me right now, there's just such a deep why for like, I think the healthcare system has done a terrible service for women's health in general and really ignored perimenopausal and menopausal women, to be honest. And the more that this grows and the more that we like talk to women, I'm just like, oh, I can't, like, it's horrible, the stories that we hear. It like the amount of women who cry with us on calls and message up, like it's insane. So for me, there's just this very huge, someone has to change the way we approach these things. And why can't it be us? Why can't we be one of the big contributors? So that's a very big push for me right now. And for you coaches listening, we're thinking about doing a little coaching mentorship here. So keep your eyes peeled for that because that'll be very exciting. But I hope you guys like this episode. I hope that was helpful in terms of mindset things, maybe make things a little bit more aware for you in terms of like not realizing you were so fixed mindset or becoming aware of where those narratives were coming from. And are you putting limiting beliefs on yourself? Are you putting a ceiling on what you think you can achieve? Like no one else does that but you. Like you're the only person who gets to control that. So are you the person doing that? And if so, like how can you change that? So I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys learned a lot. Again, share with all your friends, family. We want to help as many women as possible just by getting more information out there. Only 40% of our listeners are subscribed. So this is the only way the podcast grows, that more women can get this information, is from you sharing it and subscribing it because it moves us up. So make sure that you you subscribe, you share the podcast. We want to help as many women as possible get this free information. So please do that. We love you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.